the Women's Reservation Act is being used as a ruse for pursuing a completely different agenda. It has been stated by many women's groups, and I have supported the statement, that if we are serious about women's reservation, there is absolutely no need to link the women's reservation in our legislative assemblies and parliament with the census and with delimitation. This whole idea that you can expand the Lok Sabha to meet the mandate of reservation, to me, is treating women like add-ons rather than genuine power sharing. Well, firstly, the opposition has to unite. It has to unite and stay strong and stay firm on what has already been stated, led by the DMK yesterday, before the bills were placed in the public domain, and in statements that various members of the Congress party and other political parties of the India Alliance have stated, which is a clear recognition that this is not about women's reservation, this is about delimitation, etc. Number two, the timing of when the special session is called on the eve of two crucial state elections, where a large percentage of the members of parliament are indeed in the opposition, days before these states go to the polls. These are crucial polls for the opposition. Certainly in Tamil Nadu, the BJP doesn't have much hope of winning power. It may get some, it may improve its vote share. In West Bengal, it's a head-to-head and very, very polarized and frankly very ugly competition, electoral competition there. And the MPs from the TMC that constitute the bulk of the members of parliament from West Bengal are busy campaigning for the election. That this process of delimitation, which should be discussed after the conduct of the census, gets brought in almost through the back door into the front and center of this battle over women's reservation. The whole thing has been shrouded in complete secrecy, which means that a very crucial issue of representation that is at the core of our democratic process and our federal system, which needs very, very serious debate and discourse, is actually being conducted under the shroud of secrecy against good faith, which makes it hard then to discuss something that should not be debated in the short term. Thirdly, there should in fact be a joint parliamentary session to debate delimitation. There absolutely has to be. Yes. States have a right to represent their position, as do northern states and more populous parts of India. And this has to then come together to evolve a new grand bargain of how we would arrive at a resolution to the great challenge that confronts the federal bargain in India. This is about entrenching political power and not about addressing core constitutional challenges that we would have confronted regardless of who was in power in 2026.
Should the opposition be boycotting tomorrow's session? Is that an option?
Absolutely not. This is a critical and crucial parliamentary session. It has been called. It is the moral duty, it is the political duty of all our representatives for whom all of us as citizens have voted to be in parliament, to state their positions clearly, categorically. In fact, I would urge for us not to have yet another ruckus. There's a third issue that again is not being debated that I just want to flag here, which is that as Lok Sabha expands to 815, what is going to happen to Rajya Sabha? And in what way or form is Rajya Sabha also then going to be reformed or reorganized in order for it to continue to hold the same weight that it does?
Hello and a warm welcome to HW News Network, your one-stop show, truth be told, for some engaging and thought-provoking conversations. The center is trying to push, or rather fast-track, the constitutional amendments required to operationalize the Nari Shakti Vandan Adhiniyam, that is the Women's Reservation Act 2023, ahead of the 2029 Lok Sabha elections. And it also faces a significant political hurdle because there is an assured absence of support from the Congress-led opposition. Now, a 3-day special session of Parliament is starting from tomorrow, that is 16th, 17th, and 18th, and it has been convened to introduce the amendments that would create 33% reservation for women in the Lok Sabha and state assemblies before 2029 instead of the current timeline, which is linked to post 2027 census delimitation. Now, if you've seen Prime Minister Narendra Modi, he's urged all the political parties to back the move, calling for implementation in its true spirit, while the BJP has issued a whip to ensure full attendance. But does the arithmetic in Parliament makes the opposition support indispensable? I'd just like to put a few figures and then we go to our special guest this evening. Now, in the Lok Sabha, if you see, the NDA holds 293 seats while the opposition has 240 seats and others are 12. Now, a constitutional amendment requires a two-thirds majority of members present and voting, which translates to at least 364 votes if all members participate. And a similar gap exists when considering the combined strength of both houses, that is Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha, where the NDA does not independently command the supermajority needed to amend the constitution. So this basically now puts the entire spotlight on Congress and its allies, while opposition parties are wary of being seen as blocking the women's reservation bill, but they have raised substantive concerns about the timing and proposed amendments. Now, if you've seen a number of lawyers and activists and transparency rights activists have been holding press conferences to say that women's reservation bill is a red herring. It is just an excuse, but the real intention of the government is to bring in delimitation. And there are fears and apprehensions around that. You've seen MK Stalin releasing a very hard-hitting video yesterday that they will take to the streets, and the South feels shortchanged because their number of seats will come down. Though the government has been saying that no, the number of seats of the southern states will not come down, but there is the draft of the bill which was shared yesterday with the MPs in Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha does go to show that South has reasons to worry. So we'll try and understand today as to what this women's reservation bill is and what the real intention of the government is. Is it to bring delimitation, and what can it do? What can it lead to? And will this women's reservation bill really see the light of the day? Because as we speak, India bloc leaders are also holding meetings to decide as to what their future course of action should be. So joining me this evening is Yamini Aiyar, who is a renowned academician and a public policy scholar. Thank you so much, Yamini, for joining. And my first question to you is that what do you really feel about this women's reservation bill and the manner in which the total lack of transparency, lack of a consultative process, the manner in which this bill is being brought about?
Look, I think it's really important for us to separate out the issues. I support the women's reservation in Parliament, in Parliament and legislative assemblies, wholeheartedly. It has been a long and hard-won political consensus that has evolved from women's movements over a 35-year period. And in that sense, September 2023, in the special session of Parliament, when we had this unique moment in a very polarized moment in our political consensus across all political parties to pass the women's reservation bill and make it into an act, was a moment of great celebration. However, I am not going to be fooled into believing that what is unfolding in the next 3 days has anything to do with the Women's Reservation Act itself. It is very clear from the three bills that were shared with parliamentarians yesterday and from all that is now available in the public domain that the Women's Reservation Act is being used as a ruse for pursuing a completely different agenda. It has been stated by many women's groups, and I have supported the statement, that if we are serious about women's reservation, there is absolutely no need to link the women's reservation in our legislative assemblies and parliament with the census with delimitation. These are two completely separate processes. The objective of the Women's Reservation Act was to ensure greater representation of women in our politics through our legislative assemblies and our parliament. This can be done within the current context of 543. It is a matter of actually ensuring that the 33% reservation takes place within the current pool. Women are not add-ons. This whole idea that you can expand the Lok Sabha to meet the mandate of reservation, to me, is treating women like add-ons rather than genuine power sharing. So
No,
the
yeah,
reservations, yes,
but
go
what
ahead.
your point is well taken, but what can we do now? What can the government do? Because they are trying to link the women's reservation, the 33% women's reservation, with delimitation, which was not required at all. But even then, the government has brought in fact, they have delinked the census. The census, we do not know when it's going to happen, and now they brought in a delimitation. So
Right,
what are
right.
the options for the political parties now, especially the opposition?
Well, firstly, the opposition has to unite. It has to unite and stay strong and stay firm on what has already been stated, led by the DMK yesterday, before the bills were placed in the public domain, and in statements that various members of the Congress Party and other political parties of the India Alliance have stated, which is a clear recognition that this is not about women's reservation, this is about delimitation, etc. However, it is also important for the opposition to come out with a positive agenda. The opposition supported the Women's Reservation Act. In fact, it has been, as I mentioned earlier, this is it has a longer, different history to delimitation, and this was this moment of political consensus. The opposition can come up with an alternative proposal, and that alternative proposal is to say, in order for us to implement the Women's Reservation Act as the consensus that was developed in the special session in September 2023, we can do so in the current pool of 543, and that requires a simple constitutional amendment to the current act, which would require delinking the implementation of the Women's Reservation Act from the population count, from census, and from the expansion of parliament. It can go on further, actually, and say we are so committed to the importance of women's reservation that we will ensure that we fulfill this mandate in the process of ticket distribution way before 2019, our crucial state elections that are coming up, that it can commit to the idea, or to the principle of women's reservation by distributing tickets in accordance with the reservation requirement, and ensuring that in states where they are in power, that they will pursue exactly the same strategy of ensuring reservation within the current pool, delinking, therefore, women's reservation from the issue of census completely. There is a pathway out. The question is, are they willing to take that pathway? Because ultimately, this is about power sharing, and we know that patriarchy doesn't have a limit to a singular political party. It cuts across.
But Yamini, does the opposition have the bandwidth? Now, the 3 day session starts tomorrow, and they will be deliberating on the bill, which they have got at the 11th hour. Yesterday, apparently in the afternoon, the draft of the bill was shared with all the Lok Sabha and the Rajya Sabha MPs. Do they have enough bandwidth to get this bill, the women's reservation bill, delinked with delimitation? At least, can they put pressure on the government that, look, you want to bring in women's reservation, do that. That's a happy thing. That's something to celebrate. But delink delimitation. Can they not do this during this session of parliament?
Where there's a will, there's a way. It's not rocket science. These proposals have been in the public domain for some time now. So, of course, they can. There is no question that they are that this is not a level playing field. Every act of the executive over these last few weeks leading up to this special session has been shrouded in lack of good faith. Number one, calling the special session itself. Did this require a special session? Big question mark. Number two, the timing of when the special session is called on the eve of two crucial state elections, where a large percentage of the members of parliament are indeed in the opposition, days before these states go to the polls. These are crucial polls for the opposition. Certainly in Tamil Nadu, the BJP doesn't have much hope of winning power. It may get it may improve its vote share. In West Bengal, it's a head-to-head and very, very polarized and frankly very ugly competition, electoral competition there. And the MPs from the TMC that constitute the bulk of the members of parliament from West Bengal are busy campaigning for the election. What was the need to do this now in this way? Thirdly, if this was to be linked as is clearly with the process of delimitation and census, there is no explanation for why the ongoing census has not been counted. Let me take a step backwards, actually. There was no explanation for why, after 2020, when we could not conduct the census owing to COVID, it took us 7 long years or 6 long years to start the process of census, leaving the sudden decision then in 2026 to start the process of the census itself under the shroud of confusion, especially as it coincided with raising the question of delimitation, as several opposition parties from southern states did. Then we are going ahead with doing the census. The census data, in fact, the census process is unfolding as we speak. Just today, the Registrar General put out the whole process of enumeration, the self enumeration, as well as the survey itself. And this current set of bills is choosing to be quite ambiguous about what census is going to be used, suggesting, in fact, that 2011 census is going to be used. What is the reason why? We have no information. And then, most importantly, that this process of delimitation, which should be discussed after the conduct of the census, gets brought in almost through the back door into the front and center of this battle over women's reservation. The whole thing has been shrouded in complete secrecy, which means that a very crucial issue of representation that is at the core of our democratic process and our federal system, which needs very, very serious debate and discourse, is actually being conducted under the shroud of secrecy against good faith, which makes it hard then to discuss something that should not be debated in the short term. Who and how we should be represented is not a matter of debate or linked to who is in power today. This is going to affect the Indian polity in the longer term. It requires a longer term debate outside of current partisan context. But it is very hard now for us to have that really important debate in India because it is being done in such lack of good faith by the central government, such that it is very clear almost that this is all about partisanship and entrenching political power rather than a serious constitutional debate about what form representation should take in India against the backdrop of an economic reality that we can't change, which is that parts of India are growing faster than other parts of India.
Yes.
And as a consequence of that, because we know that fertility rate and growth are very closely linked, that fertility rates look very different in the richer parts of India compared to the more populous, poorer parts of India.
What you're saying, Yamini, yesterday Piyush Goyal also said that no, the southern states will not be discriminated. Then before that, even Amit Shah also had said, you remember the time when Stalin had called a meeting of all the southern states. At that time, Amit Shah, in one of the rallies or in one of his addresses, I don't remember clearly, he said that no, the southern states will not be shortchanged. Now the draft which you see clearly points out, and yesterday Mr. P. Chidambaram also pointed that out, and even Sonia Gandhi in a op-ed page in the Hindu, she had pointed out that there should be a fair and equitable distribution of seats. But what is really happening now, and since you pointed out that the government is bringing in all this in a shroud of secrecy, why do you think that the government is trying to be secretive? And what kind of intentions does it show as far as the government is concerned?
Look, my guess on why the government is being so secretive is as good as yours. But what it does signal is that what is happening is not in good faith. There is a very serious issue here about representation, and the issue about representation relates to the question of how best we balance out the constitutional requirement of one person, one vote, and the reality of a very widespread inequity within both the way population has spread within the country and economic growth. This is a very, very crucial issue. It is confronting our federal system that was based on a notion, on a principle of a grand bargain around the idea of equity, such that all citizens of India are guaranteed minimum public services regardless of where they live and equal representation regardless of where they live. How we resolve this is a very complex issue. There are many, many solutions on the table. Academics, civil society organizations, politicians have been debating this issue for the better part of the last 3-4 years seriously, and it has a much longer history. Many countries have confronted this challenge. There are answers. But the only way that we can find a proper solution to this is if we are willing to debate this with complete transparency, That means that you can't suddenly call a special session of parliament in the name of X and actually try to push Y agenda, especially when Y agenda is going to significantly affect very, very crucial matters of our electoral map over the next many decades. Secondly, it cannot be done in the midst of elections. Thirdly, there should, in fact, be a joint parliamentary session to debate delimitation. There absolutely has to be.
Yes.
States have a right to represent their position, as do northern states and more populous parts of India. And this has to then come together to evolve a new grand bargain of how we would arrive at a resolution to the great challenge that confronts the federal bargain in India. It is a matter of concern for every citizen and every politician. But when it is done in the manner in which it has, one can only come to one single conclusion. This is about entrenching political power and not about addressing core constitutional challenges that we would have confronted regardless of who was in power in 2026.
But tomorrow, I'm just wondering, Yamini, that what is the use of such a session where there is so much of secrecy, when there is so much of doubt, when there is so much of lack of trust, and opposition already has spelt out enough through press conferences, through articles and op-eds, through sound bites, that they are not ready to link delimitation with the women's reservation bill. Should the opposition be boycotting tomorrow's session? Is that an option?
Absolutely not. This is a critical and crucial parliamentary session. It has been called. It is the moral duty, it is the political duty of all our representatives for whom all of us as citizens have voted to be in parliament, to state their positions clearly, categorically. In fact, I would urge for us not to have yet another ruckus, not to have yet another walkout, not to
No, but
have any
ruckus,
boycott.
Yami, I totally agree with what you're saying. There may be no ruckus or any sort of a stalemate. But you also know how BJP has been ramrodding the bills. Look at how the constitutional amendment
It
of
is still the duty, it is still, it
Article
is
370 was
absolutely
passed.
agreed, but it is absolutely the duty of every elected representative to be in parliament, to state their positions clearly and categorically, and for those who oppose what is happening to come together, to not to succumb to pressure, to come together and to push back against this complete and absolute mockery that is being made of our parliamentary processes and even more crucially of our electoral process. Just one last point that we haven't touched upon, but I think it's really crucial. In these bills is a move to expand the size of the Lok Sabha. That's the first thing, from 543
Yes.
to 815, right? And this is crucial, just as delimitation is crucial, to the question of how Parliament functions. At 543, for a Parliament that barely sits 50 days with constant ruckus, we know what a mockery has been made over several decades now, but more pronounced in the last few years, of our parliamentary systems and procedures. It is a very important question that we, the citizens, must ask our representatives. At 8:15, can you guarantee me that you will take your constitutional responsibility towards this august institution seriously and ensure that parliamentary processes themselves are evolved to deal with this large percentage of new entrants that come into the field? There's a third issue that again is not being debated that I just want to flag here, which is that as Lok Sabha expands to 815, what is going to happen to Rajya Sabha? And in what way or form is Rajya Sabha also then going to be reformed or reorganized in order for it to continue to hold the same weight that it does? The reason why tomorrow is important is because with the Rajya Sabha in tow for a constitutional amendment, a two-thirds majority is required, which makes the task of the government today somewhat harder. It is because of the Rajya Sabha. If the Rajya Sabha is diminished, then what value will there be to the requisite checks and balances that our framers of our founding fathers and mothers, the framers of our constitution, first envisaged? This is again a matter of serious discussion that needs public debate and serious scrutiny, and should not, cannot, and must not be ramroded through Parliament.
So whatever you're saying that every parliamentarian tomorrow should put his or her point across and state their points, whatever they want. But the kind of brute majority which the government has, and here, since it's a constitutional amendment bill, they will require two-thirds majority. Do you think that it will be easy for the government, like what we are saying that is going to be tough for the opposition? Is it going to be easy for the government also to pass, because they don't have a two-thirds majority neither in Lok Sabha nor in Rajya Sabha?
It shouldn't be. If the opposition bandies together and stays firm, it should not be easy. And indeed, these bills should be moved to a JPC for serious deliberation. And the
Right.
public should also be given the space to come into this debate and discuss and express their point of view. If, in fact, it turns out to be easy, then I'm afraid we were already in a dark place in our democracy. We will be in a much, much, much darker place, one that will take a lot more hard work for us to walk back from. I really do hope that the BJP is known to utilize various tactics to place pressure on opposition parties, particularly regional parties, smaller parties. The use of the ED, IT, CBI is well known and well discussed in our public discourse now. It's become a euphemism for many things, as has the washing machine. I really hope that our opposition politicians, those who have stated firmly in the public domain that they are against what is happening, stay strong and stay committed to their constitutional responsibility, and don't stage walkouts and vote to their own consciousness and to what they see as right.
So what is the biggest likelihood you see? I'm assuming that the opposition will come together on this, because even their political future is equally at stake. So what we assume is that they will bandy together, they will unite on this particular issue. So if they unite, can they force the government to send this bill to the select committee or the JPC? And from there on, I think it probably might be accompanied with a lot of protest on the streets. And here, whichever committee it goes to, they will have a lot of deliberations and public participation as well. So do you see that happening?
So I have a very optimistic answer and then a real answer, a realistic answer. The very
Please.
optimistic answer is the ideal world in which we actually have a resolution to the women's reservation issue, which is very clear. One simple amendment that delinks implementation of women's reservation from expansion and census, and actually goes ahead and gets it done. Okay. And then everything else goes to a JPC, and all the things that you described would happen. I have in the in between reality, women's reservation is going to be placed on the back burner yet again. Instead, there will be a pushback and some success in the issues of delimitation and expansion of parliament, as well as the question of census in between, goes into a JPC. There is a broader public debate, and eventually, hopefully, a careful political bargain struck that addresses concerns across the spectrum. Then perhaps a realistic answer, which is we know from the history of the last 5 years or 10 years that it is highly unlikely that master strategists will bring such a crucial bill on the eve of crucial elections to a joint session without having planned for their own version of bulldozing. In what way, in what form, God knows. I can hope still that after the 2024 election, we have a stronger opposition. We have the India Alliance. This is existential, that they will come together and push this to the JPC. I hope that that happens. It's equally possible that this all will be bulldozed and we will enter into the really dark day, and all of us will then, as responsible citizens, have to go to the streets to fight for our rights.
Well, so the only thing I can say towards the end is let's keep our fingers crossed and see. I hope everyone does their best, whoever is participating in the debate tomorrow, and we'll have to face whatever comes. Thank you so much, Yamini Aiyar. It was wonderful talking to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.